Everyone, this is Dov Hershkovitz from the Pipeline Authoring team, and this is a 13.10 kickoff video. And before I go over the goals of the milestone, I really want to start with showing one dashboard that I've created, the Pipeline Authoring dashboard. And in this dashboard, we are capturing key information about the usage of the pipeline authoring features. Primarily, I'm looking at the number of users that are using the pipeline editor on .com. And you can see that since the release, we've remained steadily over 8K of users. And the week is not over yet, so I expect that although in this week, we will also be above 8K users. Now, it's important to say that this metric might be not that accurate because we probably can do some more work on making it more accurate in terms of removing internal usage that we are using and testing and more. But what I'm looking here is actually a comparison. So I'm comparing the pipeline editor users to the users that previously used the GitLab GUI to update or configure the pipeline. So previously, users were able to update their pipeline using the single file editor or the web ID, and we are capturing like users that are editing the pipeline file on master using the web ID, the single file editor, and not on master, like master plus any other branch, and number of users that are updating their pipeline using the web ID. And you can see that with a single file editor, we had like around 2.5K, almost double the amount of users that are editing it on non-master or master plus any other branch, and less than 1,000 users that using the web ID. And if we look at the pipeline editor, and I'm using the same query, I'm just changing the URL, you can see that we have like way more, like more than 8K users, as I mentioned, which basically means that the pipeline editor does provide value on top of what we previously had. And like, that's not surprising, it just make me happy to see that there are a lot of users that are experiencing this, the same feeling that I have. So the idea in this release, or at least the first goal of this release, is to increase the adoption, because if the pipeline editor was received positively and we've tracked feedback from our users, we can definitely increase the number of users that can use it. And that's why, like, the first goal of this milestone is to increase the adoption. And I have 3 issues here that I believe will increase the adoption. The first one is the branch selector. Today, the pipeline editor works only on the main branch, on the master branch. And if I just like look at the number of users that are using the single file editor using the master branch versus users that are using it on all branches, you can see that there are like more users, almost like less than 2, I would say, less than 2 times. But still, you can see that there is like much more users that would like to probably updating their pipeline on a non-default or the non-main branch. So why won't we allow them to do that here also on the pipeline editor? And hopefully we'll experience another growth on the number of, on the adoption. So that's like the first issue, that's the branch selector. We are still discussing about how to make sure we will provide like an MVC style, because like this is a big feature. Just adding a branch selector is more than the job is much more than just, oops, I need to update this link. Yeah, the job is much more than just adding this drop down here. It means that, you know, all the tabs needs to be changed accordingly. We need to make sure that we can commit and more. So there is more work for us to do. And like here we are discussing on how we can make sure we will provide our user with like a really MVC, and maybe the rest of finalize the feature on the next iteration. So we are still discussing this, but this is definitely something that we will work on in this coming iteration. The second issue is the empty state. So today, when you go into the pipeline editor, like first time user, if you don't have the GitLab CI YAML file, you'll get an error message, tell you, hey, create a GitLab CI YAML file, and then come back to the pipeline editor. And that's not like the best user experience. And like, we want to make sure that we keep the user within the pipeline editor. We want to make sure we keep them within the experience of the natural flow of the way you work with editors. Usually you start with an editor, you continue to work on the editor. And this experience that we have today, you need to maybe navigate away from the pipeline editor, maybe use your own editor to push that file, and then we expect you to come back. I'm pretty sure that we are losing a lot of users by telling them, hey, sorry, come back again, style of message. So the idea here is to provide the user with a simple call to action button. When you come to the pipeline editor for the first time, you click on a call to action button, create your CI/CD, and we will create. And we will create this file for you, and then you can start commit and work. So as I mentioned, the idea is to make sure the experience is naturally for the users. You can start working from day one on the pipeline editor. And the third issue is to allow user to navigate to the pipeline editor from the file viewer. So it's open. Yeah. So today, when you go into the single file editor, you can, on the file view, when you actually viewing your pipeline configuration, you can edit, click on edit, that will take you to the single file editor or the web ID. There is no way for you to navigate directly to the pipeline editor unless you know exactly where to go. And the idea of this issue is to add a third button that will take you directly to the pipeline editor. And this third button will appear only if you look at the pipeline configuration. So we won't add this button if you're not looking at other YAML file. So yeah, and I expect that like those three issues will probably see a growth on the number of users that are using the pipeline editor, because this is where we want users to go when they work on their pipeline file. Next, the goal of this iteration is the rollout of the new pipeline view. And the new pipeline view, so over the last, I would say like 3 iterations, I think the front-end team led by Sarah worked on switching to GraphQL. So basically the initiative starts since there was a lot of work that we wanted to do on the pipeline view. Mainly it started as we wanted to present the DAG or the need view on the pipeline view. So those are like 2 types of views that our users would like to see. One based on stages and one based on needs. And the idea from the user is the user wants us to take some of the feedback that we've captured through the DAG view and implement it into the pipeline view. And in order to do this change, that's a drastic change that we are going to introduce. And we first need to update the technology, because the way it used to work, it will be practically impossible. It would be very hard to work on this view. So as I mentioned, for the 3 iteration, we've worked on like refactoring and switching to GraphQL. And the idea is that in this iteration, we will roll out this feature. I have to say that like once we roll out this feature, as I mentioned, there are a lot of work that it will unlock us a lot of possibilities in terms of how to improve the pipeline view. There are a lot of issues, the requirements from customers around like parent-child pipeline and different buttons that they want to add to the view, and this different style of the view. So it will only be possible after we will do the rollout. And the rollout itself, as you can see, the view itself will be a bit different than what we used to know, because previously we had links from every job to every job in different stages. Here you will see like the links, the lines represent the need dependencies. So only if you configure like need relationship, you'll see this line, the line. So this is like the first change, but we will then introduce like more and more changes. And yeah, and it's important to say that we will probably do this change like gently throughout this iteration, because it's a massive change that, I mean, it's a very popular view and it will affect like a lot of users. So we'll start with .com, and we will monitor the performance and we'll probably capture some feedback if we'll have. And hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll be able to roll out this feature by the end of this iteration. The next one is to improve the pipeline editor, the next goal, pipeline editor user experience. One issue is actually carryover from the previous iteration, sorry, which is to provide status feedback in your pipeline editor. So the minute you hit the commit and you run the pipeline, you want to provide the user with some feedback. Your pipeline is running. So this widget over here will provide the status of the current pipeline, if it's running, if it's blocked, failed, or succeed. And the second issue is the auto scroll. So we've received some feedback on the pipeline editor is that when you hit the commit changes, we will present you with a message that your changes have been successfully committed. The problem is that this message is at the top of the page, and usually this is what users are seeing. They scroll down to hit the commit button, they don't see the message, and what happened, they will probably hit it again and again until they will realize, oh, okay, my changes have been commit. But like every click here actually is doing a commit and rerun the pipeline over and over again. So this issue simply provide you with some feedback. You click on the commit changes, it will auto scroll up and you will see this this message. This is the way it is working today in the single file editor, and we'll just like copy the same behavior. Okay, and those are the two issues for the user experience. And like, yeah, and popular customer requirement, there are two. One is actually a bug. And this bug, what happened here is that basically when there is a manual job in any pipeline, a manual job is by default an allow failure set to true, which means that if the job is allowed to fail, the job is skipped, because like the pipeline result doesn't care about the result of that specific job. If it succeed or fail, it will not contribute to the status of the job, and the job will get skipped. If you don't want to skip the job, you can add allow failure false, and it will not skip the job, and the entire pipeline will wait for the manual job. So we are allowing the user to have this flexibility, and this is what users expect. Okay. However, what happens when you define a need relationship to a manual job? So what happens today is that the entire pipeline is simply blocked, okay, or it is in the state of created. What happened is that this job, the manual job, is not skipped because there is a job that needs this job. So what happened? We are like in kind of a weird situation that both of those jobs are stopped, and this is not the desired behavior. The desired behavior is, first of all, that this job, which is a manual job, will skip, and because of this job that needs a manual job, it will also be skipped. That's what users expect to see, and this is what after this MR, this is what it will do. And like we went and analyzed and looked throughout this issue on like different comments from our users, and like you can see that this is a really popular issue, almost like 145 upvote, maybe a bit more if you add those icons, and it's an issue that is open for like, I would say, over a year. So it's about time we will fix this problem. The reason for us not taking our time on fixing this problem is that I was concerned that this is a breaking change because we are changing an existing behavior. But like after going through all the issues and going into meeting with customers, we've realized that this is just a bug that we need to fix. We will over communicate this, and I will probably publish a short blog that explain what we are doing and why we are doing that. But like, again, I think the feedback based on like going through like, I don't know if it's like hundreds of feedback, but there are like this amount of feedback. This is what the users really want, and they don't have any workaround and don't have a way for them to fix this problem. And so that's this issue. And another issue is allow indicating that a predecessor job is optional in DAG. And the idea here is that when you configure a needs relationship between job, you can say that you need a job, but it's optional. By default, it is not optional, but you can add a flag, and we'll introduce a new keyword for the needs field, which is optional too. And what does it mean? It means that if a job needs a job that it's optional, if the job is in the pipeline, we should wait. This job needs to wait for this job in order for it to run. If it is not a part of the pipeline, it will not wait for it. Okay, it will run when it's time for that job to run. And why are we introducing that? Mainly because we've seen that a lot of users using the rules keyword, and the rules is a condition. And if a condition is set for true, or if the condition is satisfied, a job will get added to the pipeline. And if not, the job will be excluded from the pipeline. So it's a simple like yes or no. Should we add this job to the pipeline or not? And this is a problem when you're using the needs relationship to a job that used like the rules keyword. Why? Because if a specific job needs a job that used the rules keyword, it means that sometimes the job will get added to the pipeline, and then there will be no problem, the pipeline will run. And sometimes the job will not get added to the pipeline because the rule was set to false. And what happened basically, if you need a job that does not exist, the pipeline is failing. And again, based on what we've been reading from customers, like sometimes maybe this is what the customer wants, and that's okay. But in a lot of cases, this is not what the customer wants. And that's a problem, because also when they use the linter, they are validating this through the linter, they notice that like the pipeline we don't provide any error, and we don't provide, and I think we provide now a warning, tell them, hey, like you have a needs relationship to a job that like using rules. So like when you run the pipeline, it might fail. But then again, we don't provide them with some flexibility of controlling when it will fail or not. And this is exactly what this keyword will allow the user. So if you need a job that use rule, I would normally expect the user to use it when they're using like the rules keyword, but maybe there are more, like maybe in like when they want to run like on master or something like that. So it will tell that this job is optional and basically will not fail the pipeline if the job is not added to the pipeline for the first place. And you can see also the amount of upvote is pretty high. Yeah, and I think this is it. Those are like the top issues that will be marked as deliverables. And there are more issues here, but I think like if we'll have time, we can go over those issues. Like engineers can work on those issues, but I think those are like the top or the critical one that we want to make sure are implemented in this coming iteration. That's it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ping me or leave your comment here on this planning issue. Thank you and bye-bye.